I'm riding every ride at Hollywood Studios, like a Star Wars ride where I can fly a real Millennium Falcon, an insane launch coaster, and even the scariest ride Disney has ever created. This park is literally home to 9 of the most advanced, complicated, and expensive rides in the world. But it also has a reputation as the worst Disney World park. So today I'm gonna ride everything to find out, is Hollywood Studios actually as good as it looks? Or is it as overrated as everyone says? Starting with Rise of the Resistance.
This is known as the best and most mind-blowing ride ever created.
It starts in this little briefing room where we see BB-8 rolling around. Then Rey appears as a hologram and tells us that the First Order has found the secret base that we're currently at, and they're coming to steam our hams. Then the doors open and we're rushed into a big transport ship where we come face to face with an incredible animatronic of Lieutenant Beck. The ship takes off and everything is going great until, out of nowhere, we're attacked by the First Order. They blow up a few ships and we see that we're surrounded by Star Destroyers. We try and escape, but we're caught in a tractor beam which slowly pulls us inside one of the destroyers. Then the same doors that I entered through open up and I entered into the Star Destroyer, which is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a theme park. I didn't get to take it in for long though, as the First Order forced us down this long hallway and into the interrogation cell. The general guy comes over and demands that we give him the location of the secret base. Then Kylo Ren walks over and uses the Force to turn off the lights. What? He turns the lights back on, then he's told he's needed on the bridge and leaves just in time for the Resistance to cut a hole in the wall and rescue us. They put us into these little droid ships that are gonna take us down an elevator and to the escape pods. Then the doors open up and we jet off deeper into the Star Destroyer. We come across a few other droid ships which really don't seem to mind us as we slowly back away into a hallway. We flip around and see a probe droid which nearly spots us as we swerve to the side. Then we come face to face with some stormtroopers. They shoot at us, but because they're stormtroopers, they manage to hit everything but us, allowing us to escape. We twist around a little, then enter this room with some massive AT-ATs that towered over us. We see an escape route, but of course the door slams shut and more stormtroopers start attacking. We literally stare them down as we slowly turn away, see a few more, which we stare at again, and back into a lift, which should take us down to the escape pods, but it takes us up directly in front of one of the giant AT-ATs. It lowers its cannon and starts firing at us as we spin away, hitting the walls and taking out the lights. We twist around in the darkness for a second and somehow manage to find ourselves in the ship's bridge, where we come across Kylo Ren and the General Dude again. Out of nowhere, hundreds of ships appear and start attacking the Star Destroyer. Then Kylo Ren gets told that we've escaped, senses that we're in the room, and decides to steam our ham. We run away, but he starts chasing. First, he appears out of darkness in front of us, but some elevator doors shut just in time to save us. But we're not safe for long, because out of nowhere he starts cutting a hole in the stinking ceiling, but we manage to escape just in time again. We frantically dash past a few cannons that are waging war on the ships outside. Something hits the Star Destroyer and we're told that it's about to explode, or something like that, because it gets cut off by Kylo Ren appearing behind us, grabbing us with the Force and pushing us around. But before he can destroy us, something crashes into the ship, blowing up the wall behind him and sucking him into space. A pillar falls down, blocking the hole and letting us finally make it to the escape pods. We see another pod dropping, then we drop. We fly past a destroyer and crash land back to safety.
Dude, what just happened? I don't understand how anything that ride did is even physically possible.
And that was just one of the 9 rides this park has, including the scariest ride Disney has ever created, the most intense coaster at Disney World, and even one more Star Wars ride, which, since I was already in Star Wars Land, I decided to ride. So I walked deeper into the land, went through this incredibly cool market, walked through a town for a second, and came across a giant life-sized Millennium Falcon. And right behind that was the other Star Wars ride, but it was down. So instead, I left Star Wars Land and went over to the famous Chinese Theater, which is home to the park's newest ride, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which ended up being one of the most mind-blowing rides I've ever ridden. It starts with one of the most disappointingly bad lines I've ever waited in. Seeing as this was inside of the Chinese Theater, which is literally the centerpiece of the park, I was expecting this ride to have an awesome line, fine. 90% of it was outside, and only half of that was actually covered, making the wait excruciatingly hot. Once we made it inside of the theater, there was one super cool room, but after that, it was just more standard switch bags. Anyways, after the cattle catchers, we entered into the pre-show, where we watched a little bit of a new Mickey and Minnie short. They're going on a picnic, and everything is going great until they hit some train tracks, causing the hatch to fly open and shoot a pie straight into the chimney of Goofy's train, causing it to explode, which rips a hole in the projector screen. I don't understand how this is even physically possible. Then we walk through the screen and into the cartoon, where we emerged into the barn and boarded Goofy's train, which is gonna take us on a relaxing tour around the park. It starts by slowly taking us through the park and into this tunnel. Goofy says hi just as Mickey and Minnie drive by. They also wave hi before crashing into a track switch, which falls over and sends the locomotive one way and us the other. We burst out into the Wild West as it suddenly becomes day. Then we spin around for a little as Mickey and Minnie try and rescue us, but before they can save us, we enter into an amusement park where there's all kinds of stuff going on. Donald is making a hot dog, there's popcorn, a giant swing, and even the Twister, which is a giant roller coaster. Mickey and Minnie float above us on some balloons. Then the Twister sign comes alive and starts going crazy. It sends Mickey and Minnie flying and sucks us into the misfortune booth, where we come face to face with it. We get shot out and end up on a tropical island that's super chill and relaxing. Then a volcano explodes. We spin around for safety, but end up going down a giant waterfall. We crash into the water and spin around, entering back into what used to be the tropical island, but is now the bottom of the ocean. This is my favorite part of the ride. It's so chill. And also the octopus plays the trumpet. This piece doesn't last for long though, as we get flushed down a drain and end up in a huge city where this guy's doing construction, and every time he jackhammers, the whole city shakes. We try and go straight, but traffic blocks the path, and we end up in Daisy's dance studio. We waltz in sync for a second, then a disco ball drops, and we start congaing, and just like every good conga line, it takes us into a factory where we stumble onto a conveyor that's taking us into the Smasher. We inch closer and closer as Mickey and Minnie are trying to catch up and save us. At the last second, they pull the switch, which shuts off the machine and transforms the room into the park. This is one of the most mind-blowing things I've ever seen. The gears are turned into trees, the foundry thing becomes a merry-go-round, and the walls drop down. It's crazy. We attach back to the caboose as we travel a bit more through the park. We see Mickey and Minnie having their picnic underneath the fireworks and make our way back to the barn.
That is such a mind-blowing ride. I do not understand how that was physically possible. That is one of the most visually insane things I've ever experienced.
From there, I went over to Toy Story Land, which is the biggest land in the park and has 3 different rides: Toy Story Mania, Slinky Dog Dash, and Alien Swirling Saucers. I decided to start with the first one I saw, Toy Story Mania. Thankfully, this ride's line was completely indoors and kinda awesome, taking me past this incredible Mr. Potato Head animatronic and into this absolutely enormous bedroom area. And from there, it was time to ride. If you're unfamiliar, this is a shooting ride, and normally I'm pretty stinking bad at shooting rides, but this one was gonna be extra difficult because, due to filming with one hand, I had to aim and shoot with just this little string. That said, I did this exact same thing a few years back at Disneyland and got over 127,000 points. And this time, I was determined to beat that score. First, we entered into a practice game where I was trying my best to get the hang of it and aimed so poorly it genuinely looks like I was trying to miss on purpose. I wasn't, I just suck. Then we twisted our way over to the first real game, and it was time to earn some points. All I had to do was knock over the animals, which I was actually okay at, hitting a good amount of the low tier animals and even a few higher point ones. Then we twisted over to the next game where I had to shoot some darts and pop the balloons. And I kinda went crazy, popping tons and tons of balloons and ending up with a score of over 27,000. But from there, the points only got bigger. We spun our way over to the next game, which had us shooting balls and breaking plates. Some of these plates gave huge amounts of points, but they were all moving around, which made them super hard to hit. I hit a few, including this one that launched a rocket at us, but I only gained 11,000 points, which isn't much considering the huge values that game had. The game we went to after that was even harder too. I had to launch some rings and have them land around these alien dudes. This was so tricky to do. I landed a few and even managed to hit some of the super high value targets, but most of the time I was just shooting them in the face, and yet again I earned 11,000 points. Then it was on to the final game. It started super simple with us just shooting these normal targets, which would expand into even more targets when hit, but this was just the beginning as the whole background fell down, and unlike that one time at Disneyland where it just forgot to exist, we started moving to the side. We slowly went past a few targets, then fell into the mines for the final game, part 2. I had to hit the targets on the mine carts, and the more targets I hit, the bigger the values in that line got. I destroyed the right side, getting over 2,000 points per target before a bonus game appeared. I just spammed this target, and the more I shot, the more points the target was worth. Despite the spamming, I didn't get many points. I also completely forgot to point the camera at it, so let's just not talk about it. We twisted away from that and over to the final area where my final score was revealed to be 129,000 points, smashing my Disneyland score by a solid 1,700 points. Crazy, I know.
Hey, that was fun. I didn't do as terribly as I thought I was going to, especially because I was just playing one-handed. That's probably the best shooting ride game that I've ever ridden.
From there, I went over to the land's giant roller coaster, Slinky Dog Dash, which had by far the longest line in the park. It was also one of the worst lines I've ever waited in because it was so ungodly slow and so ungodly hot. I don't think there's a way for me to convey over video just how ungodly slow this line moved. They would be sending these super long trains filled with people every like 60 seconds or so, but we just wouldn't move, or if we did move, we would barely move. I don't know where they were getting all these people from. The whole thing was outside too, so there was absolutely no escape from the heat. I should note, this park is in Orlando, Florida, where it's like 90 degrees all day, every day, and waiting 90 minutes with no escape from that heat was really not fun. Finally, we made it to the station, climbed aboard our Slinky Dog themed trains, which are awesome by the way, and started the ride. It starts with a little turn onto one of the weakest launches I've ever experienced, very slowly getting us up to speed. We twisted to the side, then twisted the other way, and nearly stalled out before diving to the ground, going past a path and hopping over this little hill that I thought would throw me out of my seat, but really didn't do anything. We twisted around this tower made of Jenga blocks, then snapped down a little drop that quickly flattened out and dropped again, making me smack my head into the seat.
Oh God!
We twisted through a big turn, then popped over a little hill and twisted into this thing. It looked like we were gonna launch again, but instead we completely stopped.
Why did we stop?
Then we went backwards for a little and stopped again.
Did we break down?
We didn't, as we finally launched in another incredibly slow launch, sending us over this big hill, which we nearly didn't make it over. I thought we were stuck, but somehow we made it over, dropped down into a little turn, and went through back-to-back bunny hills that looked like they would toss me from my seat, but did literally nothing. We dove to the side, twisting one way before snapping to the other side and hitting the brakes, ending one of the most mid-coasters I've ever ridden. But hey, there was a really cool animatronic we could watch on the brake run.
Well, that was something. It was not a particularly fast or thrilling or intense ride, but it happened. I think I would have a much more positive view on this ride if I didn't just wait nearly an hour and a half to ride it.
After that, it was time for the final ride in Toy Story Land, which was actually weirdly really good. Alien Swirling Saucers. This ride does not look like much. It's very clearly a filler ride, and because of that, I went in with super low expectations. I was stinking blown away. It's a very simple ride, basically just spinning one way until the alien thing attaches to a different spinner, causing the car to violently whip to the side. And because there were no restraints, I was thrown from side to side, which was wild.
That ride was so much more fun than it had any right to be.
From there, I started to walk back over to Star Wars Land because the Millennium Falcon ride was finally open.
But first, I have a banger joke for y'all. What do you call Buzz Lightyear's butt? A bosom. Subscribe for more banger jokes like that.
Anyways, I took it slow on the way into Star Wars Land, really just soaking in how amazing this land is. There was detail literally everywhere I looked, from the rocks to the shops, and especially this town area. Of course, that was nothing compared to the Millennium Falcon. This area thing is easily one of the coolest areas in any theme park, and the ride is also one of the coolest things in any theme park, but also kinda not. It's hard to explain why until we're actually on the ride, but this is one of the most controversial rides in the world. And for good reason, because this is one of the most varied rides in the world, and whether you get a good ride or not basically comes down to sheer luck. The line for the ride was super cool, and thankfully indoors, but I didn't really get to take it in because there just wasn't a line, and I blazed straight into the pre-show, which features an utterly astonishing animatronic of Hondo Ohnaka. This could easily be a real person. It is so ungodly realistic. He says that we're gonna be his flight crew and transport some valuable stuff across the galaxy. The Millennium Falcon lands, he talks with Chewie, and we go deeper into the line and even get to walk around inside of the Millennium Falcon, which is where luck decides if you get a good ride, an okay ride, or a bad ride. Because this is an interactive ride with 3 different positions, each of which gets progressively lamer. The most exciting and interesting of them is the pilot, where you get to literally fly the Millennium Falcon. It's stinking awesome. The second position is Gunner, which is a lot lamer than that. Basically, all you do is you push this button to shoot some cannons. It is still pretty interesting though compared to the third and worst position, Engineer. All you do in this position is just press some buttons when they light up to repair the ship. I say repair because there's no noticeable damage. You can't fail the mission, the ship can't blow up or anything, so the role is essentially pointless. Unfortunately, if you ride solo, which I was, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're gonna get Engineer, but somehow I got Pilot. All I had to do was move this stick back and forth to steer the ship left and right. It was super simple. Now, because this is an interactable ride, it's kind of hard for me to talk about it because there isn't really a story to it, and all the excitement comes down from actually flying the Millennium Falcon. I will say, it's a shockingly long ride. Halfway through, we harpooned a space train thing, causing it to fall down a giant pit and somehow stealing some coaxium in the process. And I thought this was gonna be the end of the ride, so I was shocked when it kept going. We ended up going back after the space train thing and got some more coaxium, but it wasn't enough and we kept chasing. I think we messed something up though, because instead of stealing the coaxium, we just stinking blew up the train.
I don't think I've ever been more locked in riding a ride before. Getting pilot position as a single rider is insanely rare, and I did not want to waste the opportunity by just crashing the whole time. I wanted to be the best goddamn pilot I could be, and I think I did pretty good. I crashed a couple times, more than a couple times, but still, I think I did pretty good.
After that, I went over to the park's other Star Wars themed screen-based motion ride, Star Tours. You know, if I had a nickel for every Star Wars themed motion ride this park has, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. I'm not gonna lie, I actually preferred this over the Millennium Falcon ride, because whereas that was basically just a video game, this actually had a story to it. We're in a space airport and going on a flight to somewhere in the Star Wars universe. Once we board the flight though, something goes wrong and it accidentally starts to take off with C-3PO as the pilot. Before we can leave the space station airport thing, we get stopped by Kylo Ren. He says there's a spy on board and we need to give them over to the First Order. Our spaceship pulls out its blasters that it has for some reason and shoots Kylo Ren, making him release us. Some TIE fighters come flying in after us, but we manage to escape and launch up to light speed. We end up on that one planet from that one utterly terrible movie with the crashed Death Star. Thankfully, we don't have to do anything with it though, as we plow into the water. Then some giant waves push us into the Death Star's remain. God, this whole part of the movie was such bogus. The whole movie as a whole was actually bogus. It was so bad, I can't think about anything else. Like, the first of the new trilogy I actually kinda loved, but the second one was bad, and the third one has got to be one of, if not the worst movies I've ever seen. Just thinking about it creates such an angry reaction that I can't do anything but complain about it. Anyways, we crash through the dumb Death Star remains and see this giant tentacle creature. We try to fly away, but we get pulled underwater to see tons of them. We somehow manage to wiggle free though and blast off from the planet. Lando calls over on a hologram, sending us some coordinates that we need to go to. So we go to them, and I swear to God, if this takes us to more from that stupid third movie, oh my God, what the heck? I wasn't gonna talk about this till I got off the ride as like a big plot twist or whatever, but on this ride, every single scene is random, and there are literally over 250 different storyline variations. So the chances of me getting this combination of scenes is more than 1 in 250. How? How does this happen? We fly past one of the bogus Star Destroyers and hit a TIE Fighter, which may finally take us out of the misery of the third movie, but of course we shake it off and start fighting the TIE Fighters in an attempt to defeat the bogus Star Destroyers. We shoot down some TIE Fighters and shoot at one of the big stupid Star Destroyer things, which is apparently a big deal, and we get thanked by the Resistance over the radio. And then we fly off, leaving that planet and hopefully that terrible third movie behind. Now, despite how much bogus all of it being based on that third movie was, it was still a very good ride, and the completely random story makes it super rewritable. Like, if you go on this ride, I can almost guarantee that you will get a completely different story than what I got. I hope you get a different ride. I wouldn't wish that third movie bogus on my worst enemy. After that, I went all the way over to the other side of the park, because it was finally time to ride the most intense coaster at Disney World, Rock and Roller Coaster, which is the only coaster at Disney World to go upside down. This coaster is themed to Aerosmith, and the pre-show has us watching them in the studio as they practiced for a bit, then got pulled out of the studio to go and perform at a concert. But on the way, they decide they can't strand us here, so they give us some backstage passes and call a super stretch limo. Then we exited from the studio and into an alley to go and get that limo. And this alley was stankin' awesome. It is easily one of my favorite areas in the entire park, especially because I got to watch the coaster launch, which looked crazy. Then, after waiting just a little bit more, it was time to ride.
Oh, here we go. Disney's most intense roller coaster, apparently.
We stopped on the launch, then we just sat there for like an entire minute. I thought the coaster had broken down or something as we just sat there. Finally, the Aerosmith guy came over the radio, counted us down, and we launched.
Oh boy.
The launch was so much more intense than I expected, blasting us into complete darkness. We flipped upside down, not that I was able to tell, and then flipped again, diving past some glowing streetlights, twisting around and flying through the Hollywood sign and past some street signs. We went straight for a second, then dove down past tons of glowing stuff and went through a corkscrew. We twisted past a few palm trees, even more street signs, and through the giant donut before finally arriving at the concert, ending the ride.
Well, I am pleasantly surprised. I was not expecting a Disney ride to have that intense of a launch. Oh my gosh.
Now, when I got off that coaster, the park was closed, so I had to come back on a second day to take on the scariest ride Disney has ever created.
I was absolutely petrified of this ride as a kid. And not even just like, oh man, I'm a little bit scared, but like legitimately petrified of this ride. I didn't want to step foot near it. I didn't want to see it. I was that afraid of this ride. And honestly, even to this day, I'm still kind of afraid of it, which is pretty cool because there's not many rides out there that I'm genuinely afraid of like I am this one. I'm really excited to go and ride it.
The line for this ride might have been my favorite in the entire park. It's mostly outside, but I liked the outside on this one. I think it sets a pretty cool mood with the giant hotel towering above. It was still very hot though, and it got even cooler when we got inside. I've never been inside of a haunted hotel before, but this is exactly what I think a haunted hotel would be like. Unfortunately, I didn't get to look at it for long as I was sent into the pre-show. We watched a little bit of an episode of The Twilight Zone, but it's a somewhat unique episode. It starts by showing us the inside of the Hollywood Tower Hotel, which we're currently inside during its prime. It was filled with tons of rich and famous movie stars. That was until it got struck by lightning, which somehow made the elevator shafts disappear and killed the people that were riding it, sending it crashing into the ground. And now it's our turn to check in and ride in this, a maintenance service elevator, which is still in operation and takes us directly to the Twilight Zone. The doors open and we enter into a huge boiler room, and after waiting in line for a second, we entered into the elevator. The doors ominously closed, the lights went out, and we started ascending. We came to a stop quickly, the lights came back on, and the doors opened to reveal this super normal looking hallway. Then lightning struck, and the ghosts of the people that were killed in the elevator appear directly in front of us. They wave to us and shoot out electricity, which spreads throughout the room and takes out the lights, filling the room with stars and leaving only the window, which shatters. The doors close and we ascend again, and when the doors open back up, we're inside of a maintenance room. Somehow our elevator car rolls out of the elevator and into the maintenance room. The lights go out and suddenly we're surrounded by all kinds of weird stuff, like a stopwatch, this building thing, and a giant eye for some reason. The stars in front of us come together and split the darkness in half. Then we rolled into another elevator shaft and sat in darkness for what felt like forever. Then we dropped. We flew up, got to see the outside world for a second, then dropped again, but not very far this time. We stopped for a second right by one of the windows and plummeted down, ejecting me from my seat. We rocketed back up to the top of the tower, giving me an incredible view of the park before the elevator started shaking and fell back down, holding me in the air the entire time. We bounced up and down in the darkness for a little, which obviously you can't see, and stopped in front of another TV. We saw everything getting sucked into a vortex as the Twilight Zone episode ended, and we reappeared inside of the hotel, lining up with the door and ending the ride.
Okay, I totally see why young me was petrified of that ride. That's a scary ride, not only because it has a really creepy and dark theme, but sitting there in the dark, having absolutely no idea when we were gonna drop, was really scary. That was a really fun ride.
So overall, would I say that Hollywood Studios is as good as it looks on paper? Maybe? This park is in a really weird position where it has some of the greatest rides and lands ever created, but it feels incredibly disjointed at times. The park's been going through a pretty intense identity crisis for ages at this point, going from a park that was about making movies to a park that was about the golden age of Hollywood, and now to a park that's about going into the world of movies, while also still having remnants from those other two themes. It creates a very mixed experience where you'll go from Star Wars Land, which is one of the greatest, best themed, most beautiful lands in the entire world, to a section of park that's unthemed on purpose. If you heavily value the individual lands, rides, and experiences above overall park cohesion, like I tend to do, it's still a pretty good park, and to me, it's not the worst Disney World park. But if you do value a cohesive park experience where it feels like every ride and land just seamlessly flows into one another, that is not something you're gonna find at Hollywood Studios. You will probably find it in Animal Kingdom though, and if you're interested in that park, you should check out this video.